Hey there, A's Day fans. Welcome to our Friday edition of our show. I'm your host, Joe Grotto. I want to thank each and every one of you for kicking off your weekend with us here at A's Day. Hope you all had a great week. We have made it through another grueling one. Today is Friday, December 19th. Christmas is quickly approaching. We got a good show for you today. There is a report out there that Ha-Seong Kim, infielder, had a 4-year offer from the A's that he ended up spurning to go back to Atlanta on a 1-year, $20 million deal. Would it have been a good signing, or was the rejection a blessing in disguise? We'll be sure to dive into that report a little bit more and give our thoughts. On Wednesday, there were some announcements to improve the facilities at Sutter Health Park to inch closer to MLB standards after receiving player and coach feedback from the 2025 season. We will share what those will be for 2026. And we continue on with this week's edition of This Player in A's History. We are taking it back to the 1960s and talking about Blue Moon Odom. And before we get on out of here, we have an exciting development to announce, as we were able to complete a virtual interview with one of the newest athletics. We will discuss who, when, and where you will be able to check this great conversation and great content out. Additionally, before we get on out of here for the weekend, we will update you on our altered schedule with the holidays coming up and when you can expect to hear from A's Day over the coming week. Holy Toledo, let's go A's. All right there, A's Day fans. Once again, thank you for tuning in to our Friday edition, our newest edition of A's Day. Whenever you are listening to this episode, we certainly appreciate each and every one of you. Before we get on into today's show, just want to keep providing a necessary and friendly reminder of where you can find us, including our podcast episodes that are available twice per week, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify Music, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Podbean, so many more. You'll find A's Day. You'll be able to like, listen, and download all of your episodes. We appreciate all of your continued support. And be sure to follow along additionally on our social media platforms, on Instagram at A's Day Baseball Podcast, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at A's Day Baseball. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel for video editions of these episodes, player interviews, like we are going to discuss our newest one, and when you will be able to enjoy that content. That will be made available on our YouTube channel. And then we also have baseball destination content to provide little virtual guides for you to be able to enjoy your next baseball adventure, weekend getaway, or a week vacation, whatever the case may be. We'll have some hot spots for you to be able to enjoy with a custom, unique baseball experience all wrapped into one. Be sure to check out our YouTube channel for so much exciting content to come in 2026. And to become an official subscriber of A's Day, be sure to check out our Patreon site, patreon.com/A's Day, for just $2 a month. You will be entered to win monthly A's Day t-shirts, A's autographed memorabilia, future A's game tickets, and so much more as we are able to grow this platform collaboratively. Okay, let's talk first topic of discussion. The A's end up missing out on shortstop Ha-Seong Kim. The A's certainly saw plenty of offensive standouts from the 2025 young core that continues to develop. But one glaring issue that seemed to come from this department was second base. They hit an MLB worst 550 for an OPS. That's just not even close to getting it done. So with that, and I do think there are some guys that are in line to be able to step up, like a Max Muncy or perhaps a Dow Hernandez, but I do believe that the A's are going into this offseason with a goal in mind to add some depth at this position. And they've added some guys via minor league deals, including a Michael Stefanik, who we're actually going to be talking about later on, not to give anything away. And they were initially tied to a trade rumor with potentially bringing in Ketel Marte, but Now the A's are on Ketel Marte's no trade to list, so that is not even a pipe dream anymore. That's just not going to happen. There have been some of the top end free agents like a Gleyber Torres that went back to Detroit. So they are going to have to get creative in this department, and in my opinion, I think this can get done via trade. But they did value Ha-Seong Kim here. They offered him a 4-year, $48 million deal reportedly to play second base. So he would have played alongside Jacob Wilson, and that would have made for an absolute dynamic defensive up the middle tandem that would have really improved the defensive acumen for this club. Wasn't meant to be. He rejected the offer and ultimately is betting on himself. He is coming off a down year, so I think he wants another opportunity to go into free agency after having a full normal offseason, and he's going to show the league and the Braves especially that he's still a high-quality player. So he goes back to Atlanta, takes the 1-year, $20 million deal. Now there are reports out there that the A's are going to potentially shift, like I mentioned, to the trade market. They've been rumored now. It seems like they may try to pivot for Tampa Bay Rays second baseman Brandon Lowe, or even New York Mets second baseman Jeff McNeil as potential options. Personally, I would prefer Lowe in this deal. I'm not 100. I like McNeil's game to an extent. I think just a little bit too inconsistent offensively. Whereas Lowe, you're not going to necessarily get great defense, but with what he can provide in terms of the middle of the order, a high-quality run producer, and being a consistent threat, hitting 30-plus home runs, and you can see that number even uptick more playing at a place like Sutter Health Park. Personally, I think I would like that fit a little bit more, but either of these guys I think would fit in well with this A's dynamic and would certainly improve second base coming to start off the year right away. So I hope those reports are true, that they do remain active. There are still some options out there. I think the free agent options are really limited at this point. It seems like teams have been very active all across the board, and it seems like the clock's ticking. So I'm really curious to see how they pivot here. The 4-year, $48 million deal that the A's would have had in place for Kim would have represented the franchise's second largest commitment to a free agent, surpassed only by right-handed pitcher Luis Severino's $67 million deal. And it seemed like, according to reports as well, that the A's valued Kim so much they were willing to increase the deal. For the A's, it is a free agent miss. That leaves them still searching for infield help as the new year approaches. The plan was for Kim to play second base alongside Jacob Wilson and even spell Jacob Wilson at shortstop whenever he may need a day off here and there. And the top candidate, I would say, in terms of middle infielder left is Bo Bichette. But I do think there are tons of suitors out there for his services. And personally, I think the A's would get outpriced to that market. So I think they're going to have to go to the trade route here. So coming off of this, it's nice to see that the A's were willing to make a substantial commitment. I love that. I applaud them for that. Maybe someone was listening to A's that, no, I don't really think that's the case. But what I wanted them to do was to start getting active in trade talks and free agency talks, just to see what you can add to this club that does have so much promise. And areas of need or potential upgrade would be second base, third base. And I'm glad they were going out there making an investment to try to address it for 2026 and for the foreseeable future too as well. Unfortunately, it didn't work out, but that is good that high quality reporting came out of positive interactions with this free agent, because they were willing to increase that monetary value. So it sounds like that the A's, I don't know what their threshold would have been. I don't know how far they would have pushed it with Kim, but it seems like at least they were willing to talk. And I know he's getting $20 million for the 1 year, but the A's are going to offer him a nice size contract and also some more stability with those 4 years. So that means a lot in itself. And this is what I was talking about maintaining good relations and having good interactions with free agents. And it seemed like this one went well. Kim, I think, just really enjoyed his limited time in Atlanta, and he probably views them as being closer to being back into the postseason. Seems like the Braves have had a very good offseason where I do think they will have an opportunity to get back into the dance. But then also having to play, I guess maybe weighing between playing in the Atlanta market as compared to Sacramento, maybe that may outweighed his options or made his decision too as well. Who knows? But I love the mindset here from front office. I'm glad that they're showing a little bit more aggressive pursuit. Now, I did mention this at the top of the show. While I do think it was very good of them to show some commitment, I don't know if this is the guy I would have been handing out 4 years to, and I'll tell you why. He's coming off a year, he only played 48 games, and he battled through shoulder and back injuries. I know that happens to everyone. I totally get that. And he's a Gold Glove caliber. He has won the Gold Glove. He won it for utility players in 2023. He is that type of defender. I get it. He can play multiple positions. But it just seemed like the injuries that were occurring were a little concerning that can affect certainly your offensive performance. When you're talking about the shoulder and back injuries, a lot of rotational force, that's going to put a lot of stress on your offense. And I know you bring in someone like Kim, and he's really going to shore up your defense. That's what you're banking on, and that's his best tool. And that's important. But I would be worried about monitoring health moving forward. I think heading into the 2027 season, if Kim's coming off a full season coming up here in 2026, and he is going to be available, he is on a 1-year deal, so maybe this was a good test run. If he shows that he can stay healthy and return more to form, absolutely. I'm all for 4 years. You can up the financials if you need to. If he's garnering $20 million now, coming off the year he had last year, you got to imagine it's going to be something even more significant, potentially, if he has a big bounce back year in 2026. I'm not saying it may necessarily surpass the 20 million threshold, but if you're going to do 4 to 5 years, all of a sudden you're looking at investing $80 to $100 million over the long term for second base. I do think Kim, when he's right and when things are all aligned, he is a very high quality player. He's a winning player. I do think he would be a great addition, but I just don't think the timing of it would have me throwing 4 years at him. Again, I'm not complaining here. Like I said, I'm glad they're having these conversations. And if they would have swung the deal for Kim, our topic of conversation would be different here. We'd be talking about who he is a little bit more and what he brings to the A's. And maybe this will be a topic of conversation next offseason. And like I said, that's my only concern is the injuries that he was battling through this past season. Hopefully it's just a one-off, a 1 year like that, and certainly would welcome into the green and gold. But I just think the timing of it was interesting at the end of the day. And like I said, I guess Ha-Seong Kim feels very confident betting on himself that he's going to bounce back in a big way and give him an opportunity to have an even bigger payday heading into next offseason. So, but good for Kim. He found a home back in Atlanta, and A's keep on plugging along. Just want to see them show this initiative. It seems like that they're going to actually show some willingness to increase payroll, and I think that's important because in today's modern game, yes, player development in your farm system is important in developing your internal roster, but you have to have some sort of action out there in the open market via free agency, via the trade. That's how all winning organizations operate, and you got to be proactive at times, especially in areas of need. And I'm glad the A's threw some significant financial capital at an area of need. So hopefully this is a sign of things to come, that David Forst was true to his word, that they are having these active conversations. Some of these moves are being a little bit more slow played. And hopefully over these next couple of weeks or so, the A's, we see them be a little bit more active on one of, at least, if not both of the free agent and trade fronts. All right, let's talk about some other A's happenings in the news. Upgrades are coming to Sutter Health Park in 2026. So the biggest change is going to be coming in the dugouts. One main difference between pitching at Sutter Health Park as opposed to other MLB parks last season was the lack of a connected clubhouse. So if you're not familiar, if you haven't visited Sutter Health Park, or seen an A's game on television. Maybe you're someone that enjoys the games on the radio or watches on MLB Cast. Everyone enjoys and takes in A's baseball content in their own specific way. So if you're not familiar with Sutter Health Park, you would have seen, if you turned on your TV, if you're at the game, after the game and before the game when they're coming onto the field, exiting and entering the field, you see the A's players walk along the third baseline from the dugout. So they're walking by all the fans in the crowd, and they have to walk all the way down to the wall, and then there's a door beyond the left field pole, and it takes them right into the clubhouse building behind there. And then the opposing team has to walk through. There's a center field gate, and their clubhouse is on the other side. So it's definitely it's a significant minor league feel. And I think for some guys, it was certainly an adjustment. And having the lack of a connected clubhouse, especially for the pitching side of things, it was something that Luis Severino brought up at times, who had grown accustomed to heading inside the clubhouse between innings to either watch film or move around to keep his body warm. So difficult adjustment. The A's clubhouse is going to remain situated beyond left field, but for next season, Severino and the pitching staff will have a place to go besides the bench. During last week's winter meetings in Orlando, General Manager David Force, we mentioned a short while ago, told MLB.com that work is already underway on a room within the dugout designed for pitchers to utilize if they'd like to when they're not on the mound. The room Force jokingly referred to as the Severino room will be added to both the home and visiting dugouts. So it's going to be nice. It's going to be basically like an isolation chamber, I guess, something like that, and give pitchers an opportunity maybe to check out film on an iPad or just have a quiet place to go to be able to reset and refocus before heading on out there for their next inning of work. I know it's very interesting, and it's just like you kind of shake your head, and it's just like, how did it get to this point? Why do Major League players have to play under certain facility conditions? But I will tip my cap and say that I do applaud the A's and the Sutter Health Park doing everything they can to provide as good of an experience for these A's players as possible. And it seems like that they are very receptive, very communicative, and lend an open ear always to hear feedback from the A's players and coaches. They want to make sure they're as comfortable as they can. And I do know this is a temporary home, and they are going to be in their the plan is that they are going to be in their new home in Vegas in 2028, which will be back to state-of-the-art type facilities that the majority of the other clubs in the league are able to experience themselves. So this is only short-term, and I think you even saw with this club that they really got a lot more adjusted at home as the season went on. It was an adjustment for everyone. It definitely was a challenge at first, and you just saw it by the record. They ended up finishing with a 36-45 record at home, as opposed to going 40-41 on the road. Through their first 27 games at Sutter Health Park, the A's went 8-19. After that, they finished strong by going 28-26 over their last 54 home games. So the second half success is what gives the A's some optimism heading into next season, that they can get off to a better start at home. Last year, from around this time through spring training, there was just constant questions. I remember just seeing it in the news all the time. How's the team going to handle playing at Sutter Health Park? Going from playing, even if the Oakland Coliseum was an older facility, it was still a professional. It was set up for a professional team. So they still had facilities. While some of them maybe need some maintenance at times, they had a clubhouse to go to. Right? They had all of the professional basics at the minimum, it seemed like. Whereas compared to Sutter Health Park, it was a significant adjustment where you have to walk to and from the clubhouse. You don't have as much time to be to have that isolation to be able to lock in before a game. You have to kind of navigate and change your pregame routine a little bit. And baseball players are creatures of habit. So I'm sure as a collective, it was a collective shock. But then it seemed like the guys rallied and really adjusted and seemed to be getting a lot more comfortability calling Sacramento home. and I'm expecting a much bigger bounce back in performance in 2026. So I'm glad that they are making the change of making the pitchers feel a little bit more comfortable, basically with that isolation chamber. I'm really excited to see what that looks like. We'll have to check that out some point in 2026, perhaps on the home opener. Stay tuned for all of that. And then they're also going to include, they're going to make some adjustments to the batting cages where the players might warm up if they're not hitting on the field, because sometimes the Sacramento Heat, it's excessively hot leading up to game time. So there might be time where the hitters are going to prefer hitting in the covered cages, or if hitters want extra swings leading up to game time, hitters will go out there in those cages too as well. So apparently that's going to be going through some upgrade as well. And finally, they are going to fully replace the playing surface for the new season. So that's going to be nice. They're getting it closer and closer to the top quality professional grade. They did a good job of adjusting from what the River Cats, the Giants AAA affiliate, that's their stadium, that's what they were playing on. They've really upgraded it significantly, especially in this phase that's to come. This is supposed to be a pretty pristine playing surface. So, again, looking forward to seeing what that's all about, and hopefully it's an overall better playing experience for the A's in 2026. Not that it was the absolute worst in 2025, but there were certainly hiccups along the journey. I'm expecting it all to kind of, now that you've had that first year trial run, I'm expecting it to go a lot smoother in year two and have it feel a little bit more like home for the players of the green and gold. All right. With that, we are going to take a quick break and then we will head to our next segment of this player in A's history. We're going to thank Tom's Watch Bar for their support during one of our previous trips up to Sacramento. They hosted us to some delicious drinks and wonderful entrees and appetizers. It was an absolute great experience. So we want to talk a little bit about them and then get back to today's show. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this. Level up your game day experience with a menu that goes beyond the ordinary. From elevated sports bar classics to chef-driven dishes and bold, crave-worthy flavors, every bite is crafted to delight. Pair with an ice-cold beer, a handcrafted cocktail, or a refreshing seltzer, and you might just forget you're in a sports bar. Tom's Watch Bar, located steps away from the Golden One Center, home of the Sacramento Kings. It's Sacramento's biggest sports bar. It's Sacramento's biggest sports party. 50-plus beers, 75-plus screens, 50-plus specialty cocktails. Every game, every day, all the games that matter. All right, let's get back to our show. And we are going to continue on with this week's edition of This Player in A's History. For this week's edition, we go back to the 1960s archives of the A's franchise. Today, we are telling the story of right-handed pitcher Blue Moon Odom. His legal name, Johnny Lee Odom, was born on May 29th, 1945 in Macon, Georgia, the son of Elish and Florine Odom. John was the youngest child in the family, 2 sisters and a brother preceding him. His father, a laborer, died when John was 5, the victim of lung cancer. Florine became the breadwinner of the family. It might be thought that Blue Moon was a nickname contrived by A's owner, Charlie Finley. After all, he had tried to persuade Vida Blue to change his name to True Blue, but Odom's nickname came earlier. As Odom relayed, and it is quoted, "I received my nickname in the 5th grade in Macon, Georgia. A classmate of mine named Joe Morris started calling me Moonhead. And a few days later, he started calling me Blue Moon. He said he could not call me Yellow Moon because of my complexion, and Black Moon would not sound right. So he decided to call me Blue Moon." Odom had 2 ambitions: to become a professional singer or a professional baseball player. Life as a singer seemed tangible. Otis Redding and Little Richard had preceded Odom from Ballard Hudson Hyde to successful careers in the entertainment industry. This option dissolved when Odom's voice changed as he got older. That left sports for him on the table, and he excelled in them all. By the time he graduated from high school in 1964, he had lettered in baseball, basketball, football, and track. He had gained a reputation as the best high school pitcher in Georgia, compiling a 42-2 record, including 8 no-hitters. That is absolute dominance. He had a wicked fastball and serviceable curve. His fastball was even more effective because of its movement, a sinking fastball, along with his natural ability as an intense competitor. Charles O. Finley, owner of the A's, who had built a thriving insurance business based in large part on an overpoweringly persuasive personality, put it to work in pursuing Odom. He flew to Macon, the only team owner to do so in pursuit of Odom, as recounted in Charlie O., his autobiography, his biography. He waited his turn on the appointed day among the scouts to make his pitch. Finley arranged for a truck to deliver food to the Odom family. He met and charmed Florine, his mother, at one point going into her kitchen to help cook. That and Odom's opportunity to deal directly with Finley rather than intermediaries contributed towards his selecting the A's. Odom received a $75,000 bonus, the largest given up until then to a black athlete. He would report to the Barons, the A's team in AA Southern League. Now, very interesting here. So if you are familiar with U.S. history, Odom was going to play in a city at the epicenter of the civil rights movement. A year earlier, in May of 1963, events at Birmingham proved pivotal in the effort to eliminate discriminatory actions. The nation was first stunned, then enraged by confrontation between African Americans and the Birmingham police, which escalated when high-pressure fire hoses and police dogs were used. Later that year, the 16th Street Baptist Church was bombed and 4 girls were killed. The Ku Klux Klan was implicated in the incident. This was where Odom would get his professional career a year later. Odom did get off to a poor start, but eventually had a turnaround. He reeled off 5 straight wins. Finley, anxious to show Odom off in the big leagues, would eventually call him up. For Birmingham, he ended 6-5 with a 4.14 ERA in 16 starts. His first start with the Athletics would be against the New York Yankees on September 5th, 1964 in Kansas City. Despite getting drubbed in that start, Odom was on the mound 6 days later facing the Orioles, who were clinging to first place. Facing the likes of Boog Powell and Brooks Robinson, Odom threw a 2-hit shutout and posted his first Major League victory 8-0. That victory over one of the American League's best teams offered the hope of things to come. Odom started 3 more games and was hit hard in each one, ending the season with a 1-2 record with a 10.06 ERA. Whether his victory over the Orioles was an anomaly remained to be seen. It was obvious Odom still needed some seasoning and was assigned to Lewiston for the 1965 season. At Lewiston, Odom came under the tutelage of Posdal, who began the season as manager of the Bronx. His performance was mediocre, 11-14 with a 4.27 ERA, with too many hits and walks allowed to be effective as a pitcher. He did get called up to the A's at the end of the season, where he pitched 1 inning of relief against the Washington Senators. In 1966, he was back in the Southern League, this time with the mobile A's under John McNamara. He improves tremendously. For the first time, he gave up fewer hits than innings pitched and sharply decreased his walks allowed. Called up to Kansas City at the end of July, Odom made 14 starts and threw 4 complete games, 2 of which were shutouts in a 10-day span against the Cleveland Indians. He recorded a 5-5 record to go with a 2.47 ERA. Odom did regress in 1967, however, posting a 3-8 record and a 5.04 ERA with no complete games in 17 starts. The A's sent him down to the minors to straighten himself out. Odom would go on to blossom in a big way in 1968. Inserted into the Oakland A's rotation, they had moved from Kansas City after the 1967 season. He led the team in victories with 16 and posted a 2.45 ERA, which was 9th in the league. Included in his victories is a 1-hitter against Baltimore on June 7th. He was selected to the All-Star game and threw 2 innings of scoreless ball in a 1-0 victory for the National League. Like most pitchers, Odom enjoyed hitting. At the time, yes, there was a time where pitchers used to hit, up until rather recently. Now there is a universal DH, but there was a point in our game that pitchers got the opportunity to hit for themselves. On June 12th, while fashioning a shutout over Cleveland, Odom hit his first Major League home run. During his career, he would hit 12 home runs, including 5 in 1969. The A's as a team further improved in 1969 as well, finishing second to the Minnesota Twins in the American League West with an 88-74 record. Odom shined, tying with Dobson for the team lead with 15 wins, finishing 15-6 with a 2.92 ERA. He was also picked for the All-Star team again. Odom's success derived from his heavy sinking fastball. The 1970 season was nearly identical to 1969 for the A's. The A's improved their record by 1 game, as did the Twins. Oakland again coming in second. Odom had an off year ever, finishing 9-8 with a 3.80 ERA. His elbow was giving him some problems, and he ended up missing 6 weeks of the season, pitching only 156 innings after having thrown 230 plus over the previous 2 years. The A's had turned into a juggernaut team that would reel off 3 straight World Series from 1972 through 1974, which Odom would greatly contribute to. And although he did contribute to this run and to the drama that was constantly surrounding the team, in fact, here comes a fun fact, he was lucky to be a part of the effort where he had an encounter with 3 thieves, nearly ending his career and nearly ending his life. On the afternoon of January 6, 1972, Odom's wife, Paris, noticed several youths breaking into a house near their off-season home in Macon. She called the police, and Odom, who was working as a clerk in a nearby liquor store during the off-season, yes, if you weren't aware, professional players often would have a full-time job in the off-season until they would return to action to make money. Contracts weren't like they are now then, so they had to find their way. Back to the story, the fleeing youths ran past the store. Odom gave chase. One turned and shot at him, hitting him once in the neck and side, dropping him to the sidewalk. Paris, who had followed their escape, came on to the scene and, seeing her husband wounded, put him into the car and drove straight to the hospital. Odom certainly was lucky. Neither wound was life-threatening, and 3 days later, he was released from the hospital. Soon thereafter, the 3 young men would get arrested. Odom would be able to identify them at their trial. They were convicted on several charges. By the time spring training rolled around, Odom had fully recovered. Odom had the best season of his career in 1972, fashioning a 15-6 record and a 2.50 ERA, 9th in the league. The A's bested Detroit in 5 games in the ALCS. Odom led the way with a 3-hit shutout in Game 2 and 5 innings of effective pitching in Game 5, giving up an unearned run before Vida Blue came in to shut out Detroit to save Odom's 2-1 victory. Odom's line for the championship series read 14 innings pitched, 1 earned run, 5 hits, and only 2 walks. The A's would go on to face Cincinnati in a hard-fought World Series that went to 7 games. Odom started 2 games, and although he gave up only 2 runs in 11-plus innings, one of the runs was in a 1-0 loss in Game 3. 2 days later, Odom started Game 7, pitching into the 5th, nursing a 1-0 lead. When he tired, Catfish Hunter relieved him with runners on second and third. Hunter gave up the tying run, but Oakland broke the tie in the 6th inning with 2 runs that held up for a 3-2 victory and a World Series title. Odom had topped off a fine season with an even better postseason. He had reached the height of his career at the age of 27. Oakland, the following year, would get off to a slow start in 1973. By late May, they were slightly over 500 at 23-21. They were languishing near the bottom of their division. On May 28th, the Tigers knocked Odom out of the game in the 5th inning and won 4-3, Odom having given up all 4 runs. At this point of the year, he was 1-8 with a 6.75 ERA. Manager Dick Williams took him out of the rotation. He had been getting behind a lot of hitters. Williams said he walks quite a few. I'm concerned enough that we're going to put him back in the bullpen. Although Odom got back into the starting rotation, going 4-4 the rest of the way, and somewhat regaining his control, the regular season disappointed as he finished 5-12 with a 4.49 ERA. In 6 relief appearances that season and 18-plus innings, he did not give up any runs. His performance out of the bullpen must have registered with the A's, as he exclusively relieved against Baltimore during the championship series and against the New York Mets in the World Series. Odom gave up 3 runs in 9-plus innings in 3 World Series games. The A's beat New York in 7 games, earning their second straight World Series, and Odom earned over $24,000 for his postseason efforts. In 1974, Odom again got off to a slow start. This time, manager Al Dark, who replaced Williams, did not wait long to take Odom out of the rotation and put him in the bullpen. Odom made 5 starts and 29 relief appearances for the year, going 1-5 with just 1 complete game. The A's beat Baltimore in the ALCS again and went on to win their third straight World Series title. But not before Odom got into another fight, this time with teammate Rollie Fingers on the eve of the opening World Series game against the Los Angeles Dodgers. The altercation made coast-to-coast headlines. Fingers was having marital difficulties, spawning ribbing from several teammates. Odom pushed Fingers too far, and the two went at it from there. Fingers ended up needing several stitches in the back of his head. The A's took it in stride, however. The incident had little effect on either player. Fingers recorded 2 saves and a win, and Odom won Game 5. The series was a close one. 1 run settled 4 of the 5 games. Odom had pitched 1 scoreless inning through the first 4 games and got a crucial out in Game 7. Despite their success, the A's had peaked. Catfish Hunter was embroiled in a dispute with owner Chuck Finley that resulted in his being declared a free agent. He signed with the Yankees for 1975, the first of the core A's to leave Oakland. Dick Green, the A's second baseman, was released before the 1975 season began. The next to go was Blue Moon Odom. Off to another poor start, he was 0-2 with a 12.24 ERA when he was traded to the Cleveland Indians for Dick Bosman and Jim Perry, 3 dominating pitchers in their time, each at the end of their career. Less than a month later, Odom went to the Atlanta Braves after pitching only 3 games for Cleveland, one of which was a 2-hit shutout over the Royals. It was the last of Odom's 15 career shutouts and his last complete game. With Atlanta, Odom proved as ineffective as he had been in his beginning for the A's. He pitched in 15 games, 10 of them starts, no complete games, a 1-7 record, and a 7.07 ERA. This was enough of a performance line for Atlanta to assign Odom to AAA Richmond. He would pitch 1 more season with the White Sox in 1976 and in Mexico City in 1977 before retiring from professional baseball. Odom's professional career had been marked with colorful incidents, and life after baseball generated more of the same. Now, divorced from Perry, he remarried and appeared to have adjusted to a non-baseball life, obtaining a job with Xerox in Southern California as a computer maintenance operator, never missing a day of work for 6 years. All went well until 1985, when Odom was arrested for selling cocaine to a coworker. He lost his job, and while waiting for his day in court, he became depressed. With financial strains mounting, he began to drink. In December 1985, Odom threatened his wife with a shotgun. The police were called, and after a tense scene with the SWAT team, he released her. Several hours later, with negotiations at a standstill, police discharged tear gas into his apartment. Odom surrendered. He spent several weeks in an alcohol rehabilitation program. Later, he served 55 days in jail on 2 counts of selling cocaine. These incidents proved to be life-changing. Looking back years later, Odom reflected, what happened in the past probably happened for the best. It made a better man out of me. He gave up drinking and smoking, dealing with what in part created a crisis in his life. Odom eventually went back to work, painting houses for a living, doing business as Blue Moon Odom's Paint Service. As of 2014, he lives with his 3rd wife, Maureen, in Fountain Valley, California, and enjoyed participating in baseball-related golf tournaments and autograph signing sessions. Over his MLB career, which spanned 13 seasons, he pitched in 295 games, starting 229 of them, compiling an 85 and 89 win-loss record with a 3.70 ERA. In 1,509 innings pitched, he issued 788 walks, registered 857 strikeouts, and a 1.43 whip. As for his A's career, it spanned 12 of those seasons. He pitched in 269 games, with 214 of them being starts, an 80 and 76 win-loss record with a 3.53 ERA. In 1,414 innings, 2/3 innings pitched, he issued 732 walks, 799 strikeouts, and a 1.40 whip. over his career. He was a 2-time All-Star and a 3-time World Series champion. So certainly a very intriguing baseball story here for Blue Moon. Definitely has battled through adversity and has certainly seen a lot. Having him as an African-American baseball player get his start right in the midst of the civil rights movement, and having to start his professional career as a young man in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm sure he was faced with a lot of difficulties and had to deal with a lot of adversity and a lot of hate being thrown his way. But he did well enough to be able to last 10 plus years in MLB, and when he finally figured it out at the peak of his powers, he was a very integral piece in those 1970s A's World Series champion teams. And it seemed like he was a big game pitcher, and he really showed up several times when the A's needed him in those World Series games and championship series. Definitely showed some resiliency later in life. And I do know people everywhere can be battling internal or external battles, whatever the case may be. But someone everywhere, someone is going through something. And it seemed like while Odom was adjusting smoothly, following his playing career for 6 years, working at Xerox, you don't know what he was battling internally, and it just came to a poor head at some point, and it seemed like it was a dominoes effect from there. And certainly glad to see, what he did was wrong, without a doubt, and absolutely deserved everything that came his way. But I think everyone's worthy of a second chance if they truly want to become a better version, a better person. And I think that's what happened with Odom here. He got himself clean. It seemed like he got back into operating a full-time business and being ever present as a positive in the community. So it's good to see how this story had a good ending. Well, he did have to battle some struggle. Again, all self-inflicted. But again, you never know what someone's going through, and it's good to see that he showed that internal strength to get out of the fight, and that is the fierce competitor in him that we talked about earlier in this segment in terms of him on the ball field. But I'm sure there was a flame that turned on inside him when he started turning for the good once again and starting getting on to the path to recovery. I'm sure he faced that head on with the absolute fiery competitiveness that he brought every day to the ballpark. I'm sure he brought back into his life as he got himself clean, and good for him to be able to be residing with his third and current wife. So Blue Moon Odom, certainly a very colorful baseball character, intriguing story. And when we were venturing back into the archives of the 1960s, he really jumped off the page, and it was really a joy researching him and getting to know where he got his nickname from and how good of a pitcher he really was in those few peak years, and someone that I'm sure is quite a fun and memorable A's pitching icon in the Green and Gold's history. All right, so that is a wrap on this player in A's history. We certainly enjoyed this week's, without a doubt. All right, before we depart for the weekend, we are ready to announce some exciting content coming your way on Monday. On Thursday, we were fortunate enough to connect with recently signed infielder Michael Stefanik, who has an invite to A's MLB camp with an opportunity to win a spot on the opening day roster. And we were able to connect via Zoom to get to know him a little bit better, learn a little bit about his baseball career, learn a little bit about his Boise roots too as well, who the A's are getting, and what expectations he has heading into the 2026 season. So it was a great conversation. Very excited for you all to be able to hear from Stefanik and really get an opportunity to hear from a guy that has a winning mindset, a championship mindset, and someone that's going to bring an edge in a positive way to this A's clubhouse. Someone that has experience, that's been a professional player for several years now. I think this is going to have a positive off-the-field effect for this young A's core developing too as well. So I'm very excited to be able to release that. That's going to be so that interview is going to be our Monday episode. So our next episode of A's Day is going to be the Michael Stefanik interview. It's going to be available just like our normal podcast episodes, whether you listen on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, whatever the case may be, we'll have it available there. You'll also be able to watch the full interview, the video edition of it, which is always nice with interviews, especially when we're speaking with a professional player. You'll be able to check it out on our YouTube channel as well. It'll be listed under our player interviews tab. It'll be the newest upload, so you won't be able to miss it, but that'll be located on our YouTube channel. So with this coming on Monday, let's wrap up with some housekeeping of when you can expect to hear from A's Day. So like I mentioned, Monday is going to be our regularly scheduled show, but it's already been recorded at this point. It's a pre-recorded interview that we did yesterday on Thursday. And because of the holiday schedule, that is going to be our content for next week. So we'll be off the remainder of the week from there. So we're not going to have our regularly scheduled programming. I do think we are at the point in the offseason too as well. I don't feel like there's going to be a ton of transactions going on Christmas week. I feel like if anything, it'll get reinvigorated the following week. So you'll hear that pre-record. You'll hear the interview on Monday. There'll be no Friday show next week. And then we'll be back the following Tuesday on December 30th. That is when we'll be back to regularly scheduled A's Day show. So for that week, it'll be that Tuesday, and then there'll be a Friday show too as well. So we wanted to get caught up to speed there, and very excited to share the Michael Stefanik interview with each and every one of you. I think you all are going to really enjoy hearing from him, his thoughts on the game, and again, what he's going to be bringing to the A's. I think he's going to be someone that you're going to be wanting to root for immediately within only a couple of minutes of our interview. So with that brings us to the conclusion of another edition of A's Day. On today's show, we discussed how Ha-Seong Kim reportedly had a 4-year, $48 million deal from the A's. He turned it down to go back to Atlanta on a 1-year, $20 million deal. We discussed what that meant and where the A's may pivot from there. On Wednesday, it was announced that that Sutter Health Park is going to be going under some upgrades, including having an additional isolation chamber for pitchers to be able to go into to be able to watch film, and to also to have some isolation before getting back to head out to the field for their next inning of work. And then they're also going to be resurfacing the playing field as well as making some upgrades to the batting cage. Then we continued on with this edition of This Player in A's History. We kicked it back to the 1960s, talking about pitcher Blue Moon Odom. Then we announced our exciting news that we are going to be sharing our interview with Michael Stefanik on Monday's show. We're all caught up to speed, did some housekeeping on our altered holiday schedule, and when you can expect to hear from A's Day once again. We'll be back on that Tuesday, so we'll discuss any new transactions that go on over the next 10 days between today's show and that Tuesday episode. Then we're going to do a little segment, Stay or Go. We will discuss who we think should be on the 2026 roster, who we think they should move on from, and I'm going to potentially schedule an interview with someone that covers the A's. We'll see what I can do. That's all I have for you today, and this is the last episode before the holidays, so while I still have you here, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas or a Happy Holidays, depending on whatever you celebrate. Hope you enjoy the time with loved ones. Take some time to rest, and remember to enjoy what matters most. I'm your host, Joe Grado. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of A's Day. We appreciate all of your support. We can't wait to hear your thoughts, and be sure to enjoy Monday's A's Day with our interview with Michael Stefanik, and then we'll be back on the following Tuesday on December 30th. Take care, everyone. We'll be back behind the mic real soon. Holy Toledo, let's go A's.